My deepest secret is this. On the happiest day of my life, the day I stood in a white gown with flowers in my hair, promising forever to the man I love, I made a decision that has haunted me every single day since. I banned my own father from my wedding. Yes, my real father, the man who gave me life. I told him he wasn't welcome, while another man, my stepdad, proudly walked me down the aisle. When people saw the pictures later, they saw nothing but perfection. The lace of my dress catching the sunlight, the joy in my eyes, the man I married holding my hand with pride. But nobody knew the storm raging beneath that smile. Nobody knew the guilt I carried inside. A guilt so heavy, it sometimes steals the breath from my chest. This is not just the story of a wedding. It's the story of how a girl who adored her dad ended up shutting him out. It's about broken promises, second chances, and the cruel truth that family is not always about blood. I was 12 when my parents married. Marriage crumbled. 12, the age when you are old enough to understand shouting, but too young to understand why love can vanish overnight. I can still picture the scene. The living room smelled like burned coffee, the curtains half drawn, my mom sitting on the couch with tears running down her face, and my dad pacing back and forth like a man trapped inside his own anger. "Enough is enough," he shouted. His voice cracked, not from weakness, but from years of exhaustion. My mom sobbed into her palms, shaking her head as if words could glue their love back together. I stood by the staircase, clutching the rail with trembling fingers. Every slam of my dad's fist on the table made me flinch. Every broken word felt like the ceiling was collapsing above us. When he finally stormed out, car keys jiggling like gunshots, I remembered running to the window. I pressed my face against the cold glass, hoping he would turn back, hoping he would see me watching, but he didn't. The car engine roared, and then he was gone. That was the day my father became a ghost. At first, he tried. I'll give him that. He would call on weekends, promise to take me and my little brother out for ice cream. Sometimes he showed up, sometimes he didn't. And when he didn't, I would sit on the porch steps for hours, swinging my legs and pretending I wasn't waiting. My mom would come out, force a smile, and say, "He must be busy, sweetheart." But I knew, I always knew. The cancellation piled up. "Sorry, baby, I can't make it this time. Daddy's got work. I'll come next weekend." And slowly, my hope began to rot. By the time I turned 15, I had stopped waiting by the window. I had stopped rehearsing jokes I wanted to tell him. I stopped writing daddy on birthday cards because he never came to pick them up anyway. My mom carried the weight of both parents. She worked late shifts at a dinner, cleaned houses on weekends, and still managed to pack our lunches, attend parents-teacher meetings, and braid my hair before school dances. She was a soldier in lipstick, holding back the world with both hands so it wouldn't crush us. And then, one day, she introduced me to someone new. His name was Daniel. The first time I saw him, I hated him on sight. He stood in our kitchen, tall and broad-shouldered, with a shy smile that felt out of place in our messy little home. My mom laughed at his jokes, laughed in a way I hadn't heard in years, and that made me furious. He wasn't my dad, and I made sure he knew it. When he tried to ask about school, I rolled my eyes. When he offered to fix my broken desk chair, I slammed my bedroom door in his face. When he cooked spaghetti one night, I pushed the plate away untouched. To me, he was an intruder, stealing the spot that belonged to the man I secretly wished would come back. But Daniel didn't leave, he stayed. He stayed when my brother threw tantrums and called him names. He stayed when I ignored him for weeks at a time. He stayed when the bills piled up and my mom cried herself to sleep. He fixed the leaking sink, mowed the lawn, drove me to soccer practice when mom was working late. He wasn't perfect. He had a temper sometimes, raised his voice more than I liked, but he was steady, reliable, a constant presence where my real father was only absent. By the time I turned 20, something inside me had shifted. The resentment I carried softened. Daniel wasn't trying to replace my father anymore. He was just there, a solid rock in the background of my life, and without realizing it, I began leaning on him. Meanwhile, my dad had become a little more than a voice on the phone. We would exchange awkward small talks. How's school? Fine. How's work? Busy. Sometimes he would send money, always late, always inconsistent, as if love could be wired through a bank account. I wanted to believe he cared. I wanted to believe he loved me, but love without presence, love without effort, is like a promise written on sand on one wave and it's gone. Then came the day that changed everything, the day Michael proposed. I had been dating Michael for 3 years. He was kind, funny, and ambitious. He made me laugh until my stomach hurt. And when he held me, I felt like I finally belonged somewhere. When he proposed during a weekend getaway, stars overhead, stars overhead, candles flickering by the lake, I cried so hard I could barely whisper yes. It was the happiest night of my life. But happiness, I will soon learn, can be fragile. The moment we started planning the wedding, reality came crashing in. Venues, catering, photography, dresses. The bills piled up faster than I could keep track. My mom wanted to help, but every time we discussed costs, I saw the worry etched on her face. She had given everything she had just to raise us. I couldn't let her go into debt for my wedding. That's when Daniel stepped in. One evening, he sat me down at the kitchen table. His hands were folded, his eyes steady. I want you to have the wedding of your dreams, he said. His voice trembled slightly, betraying how much it meant to me. Let me take care of it. I shook my head. Daniel, no, it's too much. Wedding costs a fortune. He leaned forward, his gaze locking with mine. You are my daughter, maybe not by blood, but by choice. And this is what fathers do. Please, let me do this for you. Something broke inside me that night. I went to my room and cried harder. than I had the night Michael proposed, because in those words I had everything my real father had never said. Daniel poured himself into into that wedding. He paid for the venue, the dress, the catering. He hired a live band music because he knew I loved music. He insisted I get the flowers I wanted, no matter the price. He wanted everything perfect. And slowly, I realized that this man I once resented had become the father I always needed. But then came the call that shattered me. It was my real dad. He congratulated me on the engagement. His voice sounded lighter than I remembered, almost excited. And then he asked casually, "So, when's the wedding?" My stomach clenched because in that moment I realized I had a choice to make. Was I going to let him come and play the role of father for a single day after missing out on years of my life? Was I going to let him stand next to Daniel, the man who had earned that place like nothing had happened? I hesitated. Part of me wanted to say yes, to give him that chance to heal the wound, but another part of me, the part that remembered waiting by the window, the forgotten birthdays, the empty promises, screamed no. When I told my mom, she was quiet for a long time. Finally, she said, "It's your day. Do what gives you peace." And that's when I made my decision. I told my father he couldn't come. There was a silence on the line. This, then his voice cracked. "You're banning me from your own wedding." My throat crossed up, but I forced the words out. "I can't let you stand there and pretend, Dad. Daniel, he's the one who's been here. He's the one paying for everything. It would feel like a lie." He hung up. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a blur of joy and guilt. Every time I tried on my dress, every time I tasted cake samples, a voice in my head whispered, "You burned your father." But I pushed it down, telling myself it was the right choice. The wedding day came. It was magical, like something out of a dream. The flowers glowed under the sunlight, the music filled the air, and laughter danced around the room. When Daniel walked me down the aisle, tears streamed down his face, and when he placed my hand in Michael's, my heart swelled with a love so powerful it almost broke me. But later that night, as I sat with my new husband and watched everyone dance, I saw a shadow beyond the crowd near the parking lot. A man in suit standing silently. My heart stopped. It was my father. He hadn't come inside. He hadn't made a scene. He had just stood there watching from a distance as if he knew he didn't deserve to step closer. And in that moment, guilt hit me like a tidal wave. I wanted to run to him, to explain, to beg for forgiveness. But by the time I found the courage, he was gone, vanished into the night the way he always had. I haven't spoken to him since, and that is my confession.